Good morning, and let me start by apologizing for the late start. On behalf of Dr. Wayne Wesley, Registrar and CEO, the executive team and staff of the Caribbean Examinations Council, welcome to CXC's virtual town hall on exam preparations. Welcome to our candidates, parents, guardians and teachers, and we also acknowledge our council members and our local registrars from across the region, and the CXC team joining us online to respond to your questions. We have Dr. James Young, Acting Senior Manager, Examinations Development and Production Department, Ms. Angela Lowe, Senior Manager, Examinations Administration and Security Department, Mrs. Karen Holder, Manager from the same department, and Mrs. Sheldine Robinson, also from Examinations Administration and Security Department. I also extend and acknowledge my colleagues from Marketing and Public Relations who will be providing support this morning and also monitoring the chat. The purpose of the town hall is to share key exam reminders with you. This virtual town hall is for you to answer questions and provide guidance on the May-June 2024 exams. Kindly note that all the tips and guidance that will be presented today were uploaded to all our social media pages, including Facebook, Instagram, and X, for those who may not have been able to attend. This session will be recorded, and we would like you to complete a short survey at the end of the session. Before I begin my presentation, let me start with asking one question to all the candidates present. And I'd like you to put your remarks in the chat. And it's, how are you feeling about the upcoming exams? Can you kindly post a one-word adjective in the chat? So we'll start with that. How are you feeling about the upcoming exams? And kindly post a one-word adjective in the chat. So I'm hearing nervous, anxious. Anything else? Stress. Hopeful. Wonderful. Excited. Terrified. Okay. Well, that's very helpful. Well, thank you for those who placed those words in the chat. And I'm reminded of excited, hopeful, and all the others, stress, etc. And it's our prayer that by the end of our time together, that some of the feelings, including stress and anxious, will have disappeared by the end of the session, and the question and answer session in particular. So without further ado, let me start my presentation with the guidance and exam tips. So do refer to your subject syllabus when preparing for your examinations. And if you could jot down your questions, and after the presentation, we will respond to them accordingly. Read your examination timetable carefully, including the guidance notes. Follow the instructions given by your supervisors and invigilators. Read and follow the instructions on your question papers. Write your registration information in the spaces provided. Before the exam, arrive at the exam center at least 30 minutes before the exam starts. Candidates who arrive after the 30 minutes will not be admitted into the examination and will be marked as absent. All candidates should bring proof of their identity. Private candidates must produce proof of their identification. You must provide your own stationery, pens, pencils, erasers, rulers, and where permitted for the specific examination, calculators, dictionaries, and geometry sets. Pens must be black or blue, no gel or fountain pens. Pens must be used to answer multiple choice questions. Pens or light pencils, HB, H1, or any other pencils in the H series must be used. Calculators must be silent and non-programmable. Mobile telephones, pods, MP3 and 4 players and other electronic devices and other unauthorized material and equipment must not be brought into the exam room. It does not matter if these devices have been turned off. They must not be brought in the exam room. You are not allowed to leave the examination room during the first 30 minutes of an examination unless there are exceptional circumstances. Any candidate given permission to leave the examination room must be accompanied by a supervisor or the invigilator. Do not communicate in any way with other candidates when in the examinations room. Do not leave the examination room without the authorization of the invigilator staff. Do not give assistance to or seek assistance from any candidate in the examination room. After the exam, you may be allowed to discontinue work and leave the exam room at any time after the first 30 minutes, only if you surrender the question paper and answer booklet. Do not remove any examination material such as mathematical tables, used or unused answer books, etc. from the exam room. Do not leave the examination room without your completed candidate's receipt. Do not leave the examination room unless instructed by the invigilating staff to do so. Unfortunately, we find each year that there are several penalties that we have to impose. So this is critical information. Penalties for misconduct. If it is found that you have used an unauthorized electronic device, the penalty is disqualification. Disqualification means that you cannot receive a grade for any subject you have registered for. Disqualification means that you cannot receive a grade for any subject you are registered for. You may be marked down a grade or have the results for an examination cancelled if you are disruptive or unruly during the examination. You are not allowed to remove confidential material from the exam room. That is the multiple choice question booklets and answer booklet. The penalty for this action is the cancellation of your results for that subject. And these would have been mentioned earlier. You are not allowed to take textbooks, worked answers, including artwork and unauthorized notes into the exam room or consult notes or books outside of the exam room once the exam has begun. This is cheating and the penalty is disqualification from all exams. The timetable notes as well as guidelines for candidates manual outlines which examinations candidates are allowed to bring additional items into. Copying from or colluding with another candidate during an exam will result in the cancellation of your result in that subject. Impersonation is regarded as cheating. If someone impersonates you for an exam, you will be disqualified from all your examinations. I will now move on to our question and answer session. So this is the open floor where you have the opportunity to ask questions as it relates to the upcoming exams. As I mentioned previously, we have Dr. James Young, Angela Lowe, Mrs. Karine Holder, and Mrs. Sheldine Robinson, who are online to respond to all your questions. If you could post your questions in the chat.
Yeah, I'll get started. Good morning, everyone. There's a question here about if in biology paper 3, if notes are allowed. That is the alternate to the SBA or private candidates. And the answer to that question is yes. So notes are allowed, lab books, etc. Practice work are allowed in the examination.
Thank you for that, Dr. Young. And I have one
And
question
that's to
here.
be clear for biology paper 3 too.
Thank you, Dr. Young. And we have a question here. Who can I ask to confirm what is on a candidate's timetable versus what a candidate was entered for? It's a long story, but in short, my daughter was entered for maths and a month later was told she was removed, but her timetable has it on it. So who can I ask to confirm what is on a candidate's timetable versus what a candidate was entered for?
Good morning. Are you hearing me?
We're hearing you.
Yes. So a candidate's timetable will bear their name, their school, and the subjects, dates, and
Just
times.
to clarify, with respect to multiple choice, you should you cannot use a pen for multiple choice shading. So just to clarify that, a pen cannot be used. Do not use a pen, and do not use whiteout. That would affect your ability to get your grades appropriate because the system would not be able to read them as it would with the correct type of pencil, as indicated by Mr. Rose earlier.
Here's a thank you, Dr.
Okay,
Young.
so
Mrs. Robinson?
yes, I was responding to the question about the information on the candidate's timetable. It will be their name, all of the personal details, the subjects for which they are registered, the dates and the time. If for some reason an amendment was made to the candidate's information, of course, the subject later would be removed and therefore you would not see that information on the candidate's timetable. I'm hoping that that has answered your question.
Thank you, Mrs. Robinson. And you may want to stay on this because there's a question here. When will a timetable be provided?
Timetables should be issued all like now. We would have started sending them out after the 15th of March, which is our non-compliance date. And therefore timetables should be reaching the ministries for dispatch to the various schools. So everybody may not receive this at the same time. But then there's also the student portal where candidates can log in and see their various timetables for the exams that they will be writing.
Thank you, Mrs. Robinson. So another question here, would we be allowed to bring a dictionary into our English A exam?
Dictionaries are allowed in certain subjects. Every subject does not facilitate a dictionary. The information is usually stated on the master timetable, and the invigilator of the examination would also be able to give guidance as to what is allowed. Generally, for English, you would hardly be allowed to take an English dictionary into the room. But just let me take a look. I don't recall that being one that you're able to take into the examination.
No, it's not allowed for English A.
Right. So all of your definitions you would need to know.
Thank you for that response. Another question here from Julita. What happens if a candidate has 2 exams at the same time?
Okay, so the local registrar within the territory is responsible for managing clashes. And note, we only manage clashes that relate to our CXC exams. If you have an exam and another examining body, we do not manage those. That's your responsibility. But within on the day of the exam, the invigilator will ensure that you are able to take your exams. In some cases, the exams are taken in the order in which they are on the timetable, or they can allow you to be engaged in the process, and they may say which exam you would want to take first. You get a 15-minute break in between the exams, but you are constantly supervised and quarantined. You cannot leave the room, and you must be given your 15-minute break in between, and then you proceed to do your next test.
Thank you for that response. Are graphs or drawings supposed to be drawn in pen or pencil?
For the most part, drawings are done in pencil. Dr. Young, is there any case where pen is required? Maybe TD or one of those? Is there any case where pen is required?
No pens are allowed for drawing graphs, etc.
Right.
Thank you for that
And
clarification.
there are specifications about the pencils that you should use as well.
When will requests for concessions be provided for principals?
Can we break down concessions for principals? What exactly are they referring to?
Okay, whilst let us move to the next question, and we'll see if the person who posed the question would want to break that down a little bit more.
Yeah.
If you need to change your answer on the multiple choice paper, can you use a whiteout?
No whiteout. You use a pencil. That's why we ask you to use a pencil and eraser. Whiteout makes it challenging for us to scan that response into the scanners, and therefore it's not allowed.
Okay, can you repeat the rules regarding calculators and dictionaries?
There are specific subjects, and these are listed on the master timetable. The master timetable is received by the local registrar, so your ministries would have it, and also the supervisors and invigilators of the exams should have a master timetable. At the back of it would list all of the subjects that can use calculators and dictionaries, and the calculators, some of them are supposed to be non-programmable, and therefore, of course, you can't put data in them and recall it and stuff like that. So there is a list. It's not on your timetable, but it's on the master timetable, which gives the full gamut of all of the subjects being offered.
Okay, thank you. Does the lab books and notes apply to all lab exams for bio, chemistry, and physics paper 3-2?
Yes, all sciences are allowed, all sciences, which should be the private candidates for paper 3-2, are allowed to take notes into the examination room and to refer to those notes during the test. There's also law, as well as applied maths. Theater arts 3-2 has a link to a video. The candidates are required to watch that video ahead of the exam and make notes. And then in the examination room, refer to those notes, because the watching of the video will not be allowed during the exam.
Thank you. Can candidates use a passport as an identification if she does not have another ID?
That would be applicable primarily, yes, for private candidates, because they tend to go to a location would be unknown, whereas the school candidates must use their timetable, because generally they are known by the teachers or the principal of the school. So a passport is a picture form of identification as well. Also your national ID.
Okay. Are all the multiple choice exams online? or written?
There's one subject that's not online. I think it is art and design. Dr. Young, remind me. I think it's art and design. Unit
Yes.
1, paper 1, and unit 2, paper 2.
That's
That's the
correct.
only one that's correct. Thank you, Dr. Young. That's the only subject that's not being offered online for the paper 1. All other paper 1s are online or can be written via the MC form.
Okay, if a mistake is written on the paper, how would we correct it?
On which paper?
They haven't stated, so we'll move on. Do you want to give some examples, or we move on until that is clarified?
Okay, so let me, I could respond, but I wanted to be specific. So if you make an error on if you're doing the exam online, before you submit, you have the option to go back through all of your answers and you are able to make a change. You can also flag questions on the online test. In case you don't know the answer and you want to go back to it, you can flag it. But once you've submitted that test online, you have no access to it at all again. On your paper, you can easily cross the answer and put the correct answer.
Can you clarify about the use of laptops for multiple choice exams and foreign language oral exams?
Yeah, clarify on the use. What do we mean clarify on the use of laptops? We can use laptops, we can use desktops for the multiple choice exams. What do we mean clarify the use?
All right, we'll move on from that one until there's clarification. In regards to the applied
Yeah.
mathematics paper 3, are we allowed to bring additional materials prepared based on the case study into the exam room?
The case studies are issued for today is the 25th actually, and the case study for applied maths unit 1, paper 3-2 should be issued to the territories. It was issued to the territories, it should be issued to the candidates today, and they're supposed to review the case study and use those notes in preparation for the exam. So yes.
Thank you. What is the process for configuring the paper 1 exams? When should it be done?
I'm not sure I understand the question. We configure the test here at CXC. We set the test on the online platform, and all the candidates have to do is to log in. What is necessary for the candidates to do ahead of time, or the IT tech at the various schools, they must download the secure client. That is the application that the candidates will use. The invigilators will use what we call the Surpass application to monitor the test. We also monitor the test at CXC, but the candidates must have the secure client, and we are at version 12.34, downloaded on the machines before the exam. You will be issued with a key code. Every candidate has an individual key code for the various subjects that they will be taken. Every subject, every paper is different. So there will be a different key code. When you get into the examination room, the invigilator will give you the PIN code for the test for that particular exam.
Thank you. Will the CSET provide topics that are coming on the exam for each subject?
Well, not to my knowledge, no. The only topic I know, but Dr. Young could confirm, because there may be some topics that are shared in the syllabuses. I am aware of law. We issue the law topics during the course of the year for which students are able to work with in preparation for the exam. Dr. Young, can you speak to if the other topics in the syllabuses for candidates?
I perceive they're talking about like the concessions from previous year COVID, where they were advised of the topics in general. There's none of that this year. We have returned to normalcy, quote unquote. Just the subjects that, as you said, have it in their syllabuses for specific examinations, only those you should be guided by.
Any more questions for me, Ems?
What do
Mr. Rose?
what pencil do you use for EDPM exam paper 1?
Paper ones, I think it's a 3B pencil. It doesn't matter if it is EDPM or Spanish or French. There's a specific paper pencil that's used for all. And it's generally, I think, a 3B pencil. One that gives a really good shade, not those excessively light ones. It gives a really good shade, and you're required to shade within the bubble, not outside of the bubble or just one line through the bubble, but a full nice circular shade within the bubble.
Okay, thank you. For C-Second chemistry, will a data booklet be provided for students, or do they have to bring their own data booklet from the syllabus? And that's from LM
Data booklets are
Gaines.
provided. We would have issued data booklets. Pardon me?
Continue, please.
Yes, data booklets are provided, or statistical booklets are provided for some of those CAPE subjects, those mathematical subjects. I'm trying to recall them. Dr. Young, help me call these subjects. Pure maths, I think applied maths or
Integrated math and applied math.
integrated maths, yes. Data booklets are provided and they should have been issued to the local registrar's office who would issue, and the books are to be returned on completion.
Would the students getting extra time receive correspondence from CXC?
Is Miss Holder
Hi, Charlene.
available?
I'm here. Yes, the local
Yes.
registrars would communicate to the schools for candidates who requested special assessment arrangements, extra time or otherwise.
Thank you for that, Ms. Holder. And if we have any local registrars online who would also like to respond to any questions, please also feel free to do so. Can an SBA for a cognate in a previous sitting be reused in another sitting of a different year? Let me repeat that. Can an SBA
Yes,
for a
I
cognate?
understand the question.
Okay.
I understand the question. There are 3 cognate groups. There's the language, which is English A and English B. There's the business cognate, POA, POB, econ. And there's the maths cognate, which is maths and add maths. That one is one way where you can reuse the paper from additional maths and not the other way around. For all the others, there is a 2-year offer. So if I write exams in 2022, I can reuse that paper up to 2024. So you have 2 years in which you can reuse any of those SBM marks from a previous sitting in the cognate group.
Thank you. In a case where a student has asthma, is it permitted for them to bring their inhaler? I would expect that to be.
Most definitely,
Yeah.
most
Yes,
definitely.
Charlene. Yes, they're permitted to bring the inhaler. If they have to use it at any point in time, they should raise their hand and notify the invigilator, who will direct them accordingly based on our regulations
CXC,
and rules.
yeah, CXC will not want to be responsible for any injury on an examination. So yes, most definitely.
Okay, would we be allowed to bring in notes for paper 3 English B?
English B is not one of those where we see notes. Dr. Young, am I correct on that? It's sciences and law, applied maths for the case studies. Dr. Young?
Let me revert to you shortly.
Okay, let me move on to another question. Can we bring staplers or extra file pages?
Extra file pages. Candidates must come into the exam room with their pens, their pencils, all that, the timetable, extra files, pages. What is needed is in your booklet.
Okay, so this is I guess this is a follow-up as relating to staplers and bringing writing paper. So for example, the paper 2 of English B, would be provided paper to write, and how do we attach it?
Whatever you need, the invigilator is supposed to supply. We don't ask you to bring any paper into the exam room. If you bring unauthorized material, that comes in as unauthorized material. It could have other conditions attached to it. So we would ask you not to.
Can you confirm the use of additional material in the exam room with respect to biology?
Not sure that I understand. I know the sciences, the paper 3.2, allow you to bring your notes into the room. But there's no other additional material that we allow into the examination.
If there's a situation where one word cannot fit in the space provided for a paper 2 exam, would it be okay to just write it on the side or bottom of the line instead of drawing a line through the whole question and rewriting it to the back where the space is provided?
On the space, ensure that whatever you've written is clear. There's no ambiguity. The markers understand when they pull your script to be marked. Just ensure that it is neat and the information is easily readable.
Why are the mathematics formulas given but not the physics formulas?
Dr. Young?
And let me clarify, the formulae that are required for the physics examinations are in the front of the booklet. They're on the front page. So that's all that is needed. The other ones that are basic that may be referenced and do not that the exam require you to know offhand will not be listed there. But the critical ones that are more difficult that are needed are listed in front of the booklet.
Thank you, Dr. Young. What is CXC's policy where a student has to travel out of territory on a date where a sitting of an exam is set to be sat?
How that works is, of course, the candidate will communicate with the school or the local registrar, as in case of a private candidate, and the local registrar can have conversation. If it's within the region, say within the participating territories that CXC facilitates, there's a conversation between one ministry to the other. CXC is involved in case we have to share papers or anything of the sort. And just in case the territory does not have any candidates writing that, so that's allowable. If you're traveling outside of the region in terms of the UK, the USA, Belgium, any place of that sort where CXC is not where they're not participating territories, between the parent and the school, primarily the parent seeks the use of a proctor. The proctor is supposed to assist with facilitating the exam. Once you've invited that proctor to us, we share relevant information with them. We have to ensure that they understand the security protocols. We work with them and the local registrar of the territory for which the candidate is participating, and we send the papers to the proctor, whether by email or shipping, and then they send the information back to us through the local registrar to have your work completed and processed. So that's allowable. We need to know in time. Sometimes we get information a bit late and therefore we're not able to facilitate, but once we are able to facilitate, we do so. Once we have a proctor that's applied by the parent, we do so. CXC does not search or find proctors for candidates who wish to do their exams outside of the region.
Thank you, Mrs. Robinson. If you've misplaced your login password to access your CXC grades for past exams on the portal, how can you access it?
If you've misplaced your password
To access
your grade,
yes, past
well,
exams.
you can. I think there are one or two things. There may be a forget password option. You can utilize that, or you speak to your ministry. They send us a request and we facilitate. If you can.
Sheldine, if they are referring to the student portal, that doesn't require a password. You usually just use your candidate number, center number, etc. But it's important to note that the student portal does not hold previous results on it. So it would only have the results for the current sitting. So for right now, January 2024 results will be available. But if, for example, you did your exams last year, those results are no longer accessible by the student portal. However, the preliminary slips and the final certificates have already been dispatched. So if you have not collected yours as yet, please contact your Ministry of Education to make arrangements to do so.
Correct, yes. Sorry about that. I see a question about a person being sick or vomiting, and if they're able to do the exams at a later date. No. The invigilator should be, and Karen can assist me here, the invigilator should prepare what is called a irregularity report and send to us with relevant documentation. I think both candidate and invigilator, if they're able to, if the candidate is not too sick, should be able to sign off on what has happened at the center. And we will be able to make a decision in-house as to how this candidate will be awarded or not a grade.
Yeah, just agree with Sheldine. Any adverse circumstances or irregularities on the day of the exam, for example, if the candidate is unwell, should be reported to the supervisor, who would complete the relevant forms and submit to CXC.
Okay, Ms. Celestine, she is one of our local registrars, and she's asking us to remind you of the cell phone policy. So I will give way to Ms. Holder or Ms. Husbands to speak to the cell phone policy.
Cell phones are not permitted in the examination rooms or electronic devices. Usually at the examination centers, we will post notices which should be visible to all candidates entering the examination rooms, and candidates can be disqualified if they are found with cell phones canceled, or disqualified if they're caught with cell phones, as it is in breach of our policy. We say cell phones, but any electronic devices, they are not permitted in the examination room.
Thank you. There's a question here. Well, I know the answer, but I'll allow you to respond. Who marks C6 exam papers? Is it CXC or markers from across the Caribbean?
CXC will contract qualified markers, teachers from across the region, who will mark the papers, paper 2, paper 3-2, and our paper 1s are marked electronically.
I've heard that we are not allowed to use ink pens. Is that true? And what is the reason for this?
Dr. Young would have spoken to this earlier, and our paper 1s are scanned electronically, as I said, and they cannot be read by our scanners if a gel pen is used. So we advise preferably a 3B pencil, and we ask candidates to shade heavily with the pencil if they don't have 3B, but only pencils for our multiple choice answer sheets. And also we advise candidates not to use whiteout on the answer sheets as well, as this will have an effect on the forms being scanned.
And just to clarify that they can write with their pens on the paper too, because so that they don't leave thinking that they can't use pens at all. They can write with their pens on the paper tools. The drawings on the graphs, charts, diagrams should be done in pencil, and be advised that there's a special scanning that is done to ensure that whatever is drawn is still clearly seen for marking. So please, to avoid you scratching up or the graph with pen, trying to erase and make changes. The pencil is what should be used for those, and write using the pen. All right, so pens can be used in the paper too to write your responses.
Thank you, Dr. Young. For technical drawing, will devices be provided for candidates as we are using the AutoCAD software, or are we required to bring our own devices?
Can you repeat that, please, Richard?
For technical drawing, will devices be provided for candidates as we are using the AutoCAD software, or are we required to bring our own devices?
I think most of the time devices are used from the school.
And the schools, yeah. You're right,
But
Sheldon.
that's an arrangement, yeah, but that's an arrangement between the school and the candidates, but most of the time they use the devices at the school.
Thank you. Will paper be given for all workings? There have been instances where paper was not given for workings. This is for the maths exam. What would students do if not given paper for working?
Enough
Well,
space is
there,
provided in the
the
booklet. Go
booklet,
ahead, Sheldon. Go ahead.
right, go, yeah, it's all right, Karen, go ahead.
I was saying enough space is provided in the answer booklet, and we advise invigilators not to give out extra sheets because the booklet already contains extra pages for candidates to utilize.
And what they need to appreciate that when the working is on the paper, often the times it helps when we are marking to give the benefit of the doubt. If you put it on scrap, and that's why we don't encourage it or allow it, because if it's on scrap, you can be running the risk of not getting all the marks that you could get.
If you put it on scrap, you have to leave the scrap in the examination room when you're leaving. You cannot have scrap and the scrap is not submitted. Next question, Mr. Rose.
If we are using our own devices, technical drawing is a reference, would there be a process in place to say restrict the device?
I am not 100% sure, but it all depends on what is on the device, and we need to ensure that before the device leaves the school, that your work has been copied, uploaded, and all retrieved. If you take that device home, what guarantee do we have that you haven't messed with it, meddled with the exam after the fact? And that's why primarily those devices are used within the school. And if you must use yours, you need to ensure that everything is available before you leave. And I know lots of times candidates will not want their devices tampered with, but if there are times where we have to use a device belonging to a student, you may also be required to clean your device.
What pencils do you use for EDM paper 1? I think this may have been answered earlier. Do you have to bring your own laptop? Do you have to bring your own laptop for EDPM paper 2?
As I said before, which also applies to any paper that's being used. Most of the time, that is arrangement that's done at the school, and primarily candidates use the devices that are at the schools.
Do you need, I think this question means, do you need to wear a mask for PE and sports practical?
You need to wear a mask?
I would say please be guided by the
if a mask is required.
Yeah.
The external examiners, the external examiners who are conducting the practicals would advise the candidates accordingly.
Thank you. Is it okay to write the scale of your graph on the right of the graph where there is no grid?
Dr. Young?
Where there's no grid. I'm trying to picture that.
And
What they're talking about on the right of the graph. Once it is not in the space that we say do not write in this area, but and it can be clearly seen next to the graph, that is fine. Some subjects have spaces for where the scale should be written. But in this instance, I believe once it is next to the graph, but not in the space where it says do not write in this area. Yeah.
And is the title of the graph to be written in pencil as well?
That would be recommended. It is not some persons still write it in pen, but the challenge with that is if you write it in pen and you want to erase or change what you're writing on that graph, it makes it a little bit difficult to be able to redo it. So the best thing I would say is to keep it in pencil, everything you do on the graph in pencil.
Can you please clarify if all schools across the region are doing paper 1 online?
Not necessarily. Do we need anything further than that?
I was going to ask you to elaborate.
Okay. Well, schools usually they are asked to submit the information to us if they're doing the examination online. And if a particular school, let's say Queen's College, is doing maths, the entire school is required to do maths online. So it's not a case where half do and half don't. And then we also take into consideration those territories or centers who do not have the facility and cannot do the paper online. So then they will do it paper-based. Where possible, we are encouraging you to do your papers online.
Thank you, Mrs. Robinson. In the case that we have technical difficulties during the exams, will we get extra time?
Well, yes, as it relates to the invigilator will make that call as to what's happening on the ground. They will also inform us or send in a irregularity sheet if there are any challenges. So where there are technical difficulties, that call is made on the ground and candidates are not usually disadvantaged. If it is not a fault of the candidate's own, they will not be disadvantaged.
Are laptops provided to information technology paper 03?
Laptops, desktops, from the school, most of the time, yes, are provided to the candidates to write their test online. IT 32 is a test that's done online.
How much time before the exam is the local IT allowed to download secure client?
The secure client should be downloaded to the computer. Could be days before. We do not recommend that you wait until the morning of the exam or the afternoon of the exam. Things could happen, and then the test could be late. Children get anxious and all of that. So we would recommend to the IT technicians to download the application ahead of time, a day in advance, a week in advance, how much ever time. But for those persons who would have done the pre-test, would have had an advantage because you know that that's the same secure client that was already used for that exercise, and that's the same one that you'll be using for your exam. Do not wait until the morning of the exam to download the secure client.
Why was Caribbean Studies and Chemistry Unit 1 timetable for the same day and then Physics Unit 1 the day after?
Well, my friend, we have the timetable and the exams, and some days exams will clash. That's the challenge that we face. We offer several exams, several components, and there's a short window. There's a 5-week, 6-week period in which all exams should be done, and some exams will clash. And if we shift those two, and put another tool, another person will complain that this is not acceptable for them. And it's difficult to manage everyone's needs. So some things will clash.
Do we still get a data booklet for CAPE Unit 2 Chemistry?
Chemistry data booklets are offered for, let's see, the sciences. Chemistry, Dr. Young is in that as well. Oh, maths.
I believe for CAPE
Dr.
chemistry there, I
Young.
believe for CAPE chemistry there is a data booklet with information, but let me just get back, let you know this shortly.
Where can we access the secure client?
There is a link that we would normally share with the territories. We could find the link and drop it in the chat, but there is a link where the secure client is downloaded. So give me a minute. I could drop it in the chat, but generally that link is provided to territories, and the ICTs generally would install it on the computers.
And just a point, a reference for Mr. Tull in providing a link to the CXC study guides in the chat as well.
Okay. Okay, yes.
Okay, here we go.
Just-
Another-
I'll put that link in before the session is ended.
Is it only CAPE exams that are electronic?
No, CSET, CCSLC as well.
Oh, could I just interject here? I do not believe that the data booklets are necessary for the CAPE science, CAPE chemistry anymore. All information is provided within the question paper. Just responding regarding the CSEC English B, someone had asked if the notes, they can take notes in for the paper 3. To indicate that that is not necessary, that is not allowed actually for the English B paper 3. No notes are
Right.
allowed.
How many sheets of paper are permitted in the biology, physics, or physics paper 3?
Sheets of paper, you mean for the candidate to take into the examination room?
I think that's what they may be referencing.
No, we spoke to this. Candidates are not allowed to take any excess material into the examination room, except for what is required. If you're doing a 3-2, you take your notes into the examination room and you refer to your notes when you're answering the questions.
Thank you. What happens if there are connectivity issues on the day of the paper 1 exam?
Well, we have 2 choices. If the connectivity issues are resolved quickly, you can continue your test online. If not, we would recommend that you write the paper. And if you write in paper, let's say that you've started and you're down to maybe question 10 or 15, you have connectivity issues. Generally, you have no idea when the internet would resume. If you are on a desktop and you lose power, you know, that's gone. So we would recommend that you switch quickly to paper. And if you do that, you start your test over and the invigilator is supposed to allow you the time to finish your test.
And there's a note for you, Mrs. Robinson, to remind candidates about resit and alternate.
Resit and alternate papers are done by private candidates, not candidates within schools. School candidates are required to do SBA. And if you've done an SBA, you can resit. Resit means that you can reuse the SBA score that you would have used in that first sitting 2 years later, up to 2 years later. So if you've done a test, if you've done SBA in 2022, You can reuse it in year 1, 23, and then in year 2, 24. After that, you need to reset. You need to redo estimate if you are still in school. If you're not in school, you write the alternate paper.
Can notes be brought into the accounting paper 3 exam?
I do not think that's the one that has notes. But we can confirm. I don't have my timetable before me, but to my recollection, all subjects, because they're 3-2, do not carry notes into the examination room. I would have mentioned law, applied math with the case study. We have theater arts, paper 3-2, and we have the sciences. Not every paper allows notes into the examination room.
For map work in geography, is string authorized to bring into the exam room?
String? Is that what
String,
you said, Mr. Rose?
yes, string.
Yeah, string is not a requirement,
Or
Mr.
carrying?
Yeah, string is
Okay.
not a requirement. Those were the very old days when we used to have the old answer booklets, but now with e-marking, everything is in the booklet. Oh, wait, Sheldon, sorry, refer to the stationary allocation as well for further guidance. I'm thinking that the string that was used to tie the graph sheet onto the booklet that we used to use in the older days. But the stationary allocation, you can check that for further information to see if it's permitted.
Thank you for that, Mrs. Holder.
Yeah.
Concerning students who apply for special need and want to get extra time, when will they know if they have been given extra time?
All right, so the special assessment arrangement requests, which were submitted by the ORS by the local registrars, they were approved on the 9th of March, and local registrars should by now have communicated those approvals to teachers, students, and invigilators.
Okay, I see Mr. Merrick Smith, one of our local registrars, has his hand up. Can you allow him to respond, please? Or make a
1
comment?
second, please, Mr. Rose, before he responds. Additional information has come which says that the string for geography is
Right.
to help measure on the map work, and it should be provided by us if required, if needed.
Thanks for clarifying that, Sheldon. I was thinking about the
Yes.
old booklet, the
Yes.
old method, but yes. Thank you for that.
So we can hear Mr. Smith
Mr.
now.
Smith,
Oh, yeah, that was exactly what I was going to contribute, that the string supplied for geography in the map work, some students use paper as well. And in our case, I know we provide the paper if they prefer the paper as opposed to the string.
thank
the
you, Mr.
measurement.
Smith.
For measuring
Thank you.
distances on the map, yes.
Yeah.
If a candidate has 2 exams in different locations on the same day, morning and afternoon, due to one subject being done privately, can the private paper be sent over to the location for the other exam to avoid being late due to distance between locations?
Well, that's considered a clash, and I'm thinking that's should be organized and arranged with the local registrar to facilitate the candidate not being late and being able to meet the exam. So that is something that can be facilitated. We also allow you to sit at the nearest center. So if you're already at the center and there are enough papers there at the center, even if they're not, you speak to your local registrar, that can be arranged.
So this one, thank you for that. This is in regards to the territorial merit list. Where can we get access to them and the ones from previous years?
I can post that link in the chat. That's okay.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Husbands. When will feedback be received for applications for special accommodations?
The special
ordered.
assessment arrangements, as I said earlier, they were approved on the 9th of March, and by now, all local registrars should have communicated to centers and invigilators, candidates who have been approved for special assessment arrangements and the type of arrangements they have been approved for. So if you have not received information regarding your approval for your request, kindly reach out to your local registrar. And that is also to local registrars. If you have not received any information on a request that you would have submitted, you can feel free to send me an email.
Okay, and this one I think you've answered already. Can the cell phone be put in the bag and turned off?
If it's turned off, the invigilator will not know that it's inside of the bag, but my advice is not to take it in at all, whether it is in the off position, silent position. Do not take cell phones into the examination room at all. I can speak, for example, to what happens here in Barbados. I'm not sure if Dr. Reddy is on the call, but invigilators will arrange for a special place for bags and have security watch bags to ensure that the contents are protected. But my advice is do not take any cell phones or electronic devices into the classroom.
Thank you for that. Can you pay for your paper to be re-corrected? I think they mean remarked.
Reviewed,
Reviewed.
hearing.
Yes, candidates can raise a review request via the school or examination center or your local registrar's office. And it is 4 weeks after we've issued results.
And this question, would the and this falls under the guidelines as well. Would the invigilator advise the candidates before the exam on the rules or guidelines regarding the use of pencils, pens, cell phones, etc.?
That's my question. Can you repeat? Richard, I'm not.
Will the invigilator advise the candidates before the exam on the rules or guidelines regarding the use of pencils, pens, cell phones, etc.?
There are guidelines we issue to candidates governing what can be taken into the examination room, and my advice is that candidates should familiarize themselves with the guidelines. However, the invigilators and supervisors are there, to give support and advice on entering the examination room and what is required.
Are CAPE papers being marked on a curve relative to other students like CSEC, or are there fixed percentages for what is a grade 1, 2, 3, etc.?
That's a question for Dr. Young.
I'm sorry, we do not grade on a curve. So just to be clear, we do not grade on a curve, and it is based on what each candidate achieves. If they achieve the specific mark that is required for that grade, then they will be awarded that grade. It does not depend on your performance relative to anyone else. So go out there and get those high grades.
Good advice.
Correct.
This is a follow-up to the question asked about the student who has to travel during the May CXC sitting. Is it possible for a student to sit a paper 2 on the same date of a paper 1 to accommodate the student not being able to sit on the date of paper 2 due to travel?
The exam timetable is not shifted to accommodate any candidate. The candidates must accommodate the timetable.
Since paper 1 exams are online, will scrap paper be provided for mathematics multiple choice paper 1?
Dr. Young, is that necessary?
Sorry, can you please repeat?
Since paper 1 exams are online, will scrap paper be provided for mathematics multiple choice paper 1?
That one will have to speak with the exams department to determine. In that regard, I believe it is, and it is taken back with the booklet. So the invigilators generally do provide them.
There's
During
no
that.
booklet, Dr. Young. He said
Sorry,
online.
they're taken back.
So
Sorry.
yeah, so
They're
yes,
just taken back. They don't leave with
it
the
remain
stuff.
correct.
Can you use a dictionary in your English exam?
Answered that one before. I do not think dictionaries are allowed in the English exam. No. Dr. Young would have said no.
Okay, can a CAPE student still be able to obtain an associate degree certificate if their school has not registered them at the time of registration? Also, what are the groupings for associate degrees?
If you've not registered at the time of the exam, you will not be able to get an associate degree. Am I missing something on the question?
Sheldon, I can respond. For the associate degree program, well, you should register during your final year of the CAPE exams. If you did not and you met the criteria, you can pay for the associate degree certificate afterwards. The cost is $75 US, and that is made through our website. However, before a candidate does that, what they should do is check our associate degree manual. I will post the link after I've spoken so that they can make sure that they have met the criteria before going ahead and paying for that associate degree.
Thank you, Ms. Osborne.
Thank you, Nisha.
Unit 1, CAPE Pure Math. Will there be a formula sheet?
The booklets are offered for the math subjects. Those data sheets for those math subjects, yes.
What if someone wants to access CXC past papers online directly from CXC, but they're not able to pay to view the copies? What arrangements can be made so they can freely view the papers from CXC?
That would be Nisha.
Hi, the past papers are available, like the person said, via the appropriate page, the CXC store, and local bookstores also carry them. There are no free copies of past papers available to students at this time. They're only paid copies. They can access the subject syllabuses and the subject reports, etc., free of cost via our website, but the past papers have a cost associated with them.
When will all subject reports for CSEC and CAPE be made available?
This is a matter that we are aware of and we are treating with urgency. It is taking a lot longer than we would have anticipated because it is a process and it's significant delays over the past few years, especially dealing through COVID. A lot of things have been, delayed, and so there's a backlog that we are seeking to clear up where they are available. So we are addressing that as best as possible at this time.
Can anything be done if the ministry states that the candidate is not registered, but the exam fees have been paid?
If the if the ministry says that the candidate was not registered, but the fees have been paid, they need to have that confirmed and checked with the ministry and the school, because we don't deal directly with the candidates when it comes to fees. So they still need to go through the ministry, but they can get it worked out, and if they can, we can get it worked out.
Okay, a user asks, can anything be done if the ministry states that the candidate has not been registered, but the exam fees have been paid?
In all cases, the ministry still has to be involved in this. So I will reiterate, candidates must still deal with the schools and the ministries. And sometimes it's just maybe a misunderstanding, and there are times when we have to get involved. And I would reiterate that it will be resolved. It can be resolved once fees have been paid and the candidate may appear not to be registered. There are times when candidates go to the centers to write their exams, even if they've not been registered, we accept walk-ins, and then registration happens afterwards. It will be resolved. It can still be sorted. It's nothing that is unresolvable.
Thank you. A user asks, in a previous response, you indicated that students' laptops must be clean before downloading Secure Client. Can you please provide clarity of what clean means?
No, I didn't say that. I said there are cases where if you must use your device, and I think that's why in a lot of cases candidates don't, is because depending on what's on your machine, you may need to have the machine checked, clean, yes. And the ICT, I guess they're the ones that will have to check it and decide what has to be clean. I wouldn't imagine that clean means reformatting, but it would mean if there's information that could help you in the exam and you could easily switch to that information, that is something that will need to be managed. However, Secure Client is an application that locks down the computer when you launch it, and therefore, if the tests are locked, their tests are offered in locked and unlocked state. If the test is locked, it means the candidate will not be able to maneuver on any other aspect of the computer, so there will be no need for cleaning. If the test is unlocked, as in the case of EDPM or IT Paper 3.2, where you require the use of external applications like Word or Excel, that is the case where we may have to do some checks, and the ITC may need to do some cleaning to ensure that you don't get access to things that you ought not to get access to. I would not imagine that it would mean reformatting your computer and removing all of your applications. Just any files that could prevent you, you may be encouraged to check. But usually, in a lot of cases, the schools provide computers. If you are uncomfortable with your laptop, personal laptop being used, you ensure that you are, able to procure one at the school for your examination. But again, that is a conversation that happens with the schools, with the local registrars, who uses a machine that's their personal one, as opposed to who uses a machine, or if you use a machine that's your personal one, or if you use machines at the school. Hope that answers and clarifies any queries relating to cleaning.
Thanks for that response. This question was asked a couple times. For technical drawing paper 2, will candidates be able to bring their laptops in order to use the computer-aided design AutoCAD software to complete their drawings, or will they be provided?
Right, so the same response, not long, we'll go for that.
When will feedback be received for applications for special accommodations?
At this point, candidates and schools should make contact with their local registrar's office if they have not received any information about special assessment arrangements. I will say that special assessments were approved by CXC on the 9th of March.
Could you clarify the process for appealing SBA marks, especially when teachers have not processed or gave them a failing grade?
candidates who appeal the SBA scores should raise this at the level of the school or with the local registrar. This is the SBA mark. I hope that I'm interpreting this correctly. This is the SBA mark awarded by the teacher.
Yes, that's the impression I get.
Right.
Yeah, we are guided by the teachers in this regard. Whatever the teacher submits, we consider it as final, and then we do our moderation. We
Yeah.
do not change that in that way. If the moderation causes it to improve, then fine. But there's no process for after the submission of the SBA scores for any individual to appeal an SBA mark specifically.
Thank you for all your questions and for the responses from the CXC team and our local registrars. I would now ask if you could complete our short survey in the chat, and then we'll come back to the session.
Mr. Rose, while candidates are completing the survey, I just wanted to mention that I posted a number of links in the chat, and we will also be sharing those links on our social media pages. So you will see the link to Student Central, which is on our website, and that will give you access to the syllabuses, the master timetables, the student portal, etc. There's also a link to the local registrar's directory in case you needed to reach out to your local registrar in your country. There's also a specific link to the master timetables, the guidelines to candidates manual. That's a very important document. It having a lot of the answers we would have shared today, you can obtain from there. There's a link to the subject syllabuses, where you can access the past papers, where you can access our study guides. Someone asked a question about the merit list. That list is there as well as the associate degree handbook. So again, we will be sharing those links on our social media pages for you to access.
Thank you, Ms. Osborns, and you have saved me the task of saying it at the end, so thank you for that. So if you could kindly complete our short survey in the chat. And just before we conclude, we'll be going directly to our Student Central portal so you can see the resources that are available there. We are seeing Mr. Tull.
This is our Student Central portal, where you can access a lot of the commonly requested data from our website. So you can download our subject reports as well as our syllabuses. Any current events will also be housed here. Also, information about our partners, such as study guides, past papers. We can also take demo e-tests. Just bear in mind that this space doesn't allow for results, but it's just to familiarize yourself with the e-testing environment. There are helpful links to the CXC store and other resources. Our timetable links, guidelines for candidates, our local registrar directory, SBA treatment handbook, and a direct link to where you can access the student portal. So this is a helpful resource that CXC has put together to assist students as they prepare for their examinations. And the link is cxc.org/student-central. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tull, and please be reminded that all the examination tips that we walk through today are on our social media pages, Facebook, Instagram, and X. And finally, before we close, on behalf of Dr. Wayne Wesley, Registrar and CEO, the executive team at CXC and staff of CXC, we wish you all the very best for your exams. You will do well. Thank you again, and every blessing. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.